Hey everyone, it's that math magician, and on this video, I'd like to talk about trigonometry functions. Sometimes I shorten those to just saying trig functions, and really what that is it's sine, cosine, and tangent. So let's go ahead and just recap what the sine, cosine, and tangent functions are and what information we need in order to use them. Now, in order to use trigonometry functions, we need a right triangle. Okay, we need a triangle that has a right angle where we need to know at least two pieces of information. We either need to know an angle and one side, or we can know two sides and not know the angle, but we need to always have at least two pieces of information. So let's recap how these functions work. So we have sine of theta, we have cosine of theta, and we'll have tangent of theta. Remember, theta here refers to the angle inside the triangles. Sometimes we call it our reference angle. Now sine theta is always going to be opposite over hypotenuse. So I'm going to label this as opposite over hypotenuse. Okay, cosine of theta equals adjacent. Remember, adjacent just means next to, over hypotenuse. And finally, tangent ends up being opposite over adjacent. All right, and then we also came up with a little acronym to help us remember that. And some of you may have remembered that. We called it Sohcahtoa. And so I'm going to write it out like this. We see Sohcahtoa. It's taken me a while to write this out just because I'm trying to make sure I keep my color scheme the same. And so if you want to write that down, maybe that'll help you with the other problems you'll be working on. But basically, sine uses opposite and hypotenuse, cosine uses adjacent and hypotenuse, and tangent uses opposite and adjacent. So now that we have all these three formulas set out for us, we have three different trig functions to use. Now we want to actually use these in order to solve for the unknown. And the unknown is going to vary each time for each problem. Sometimes we're going to be solving for a side. Sometimes we'll be solving for an angle. It just depends on what information you have. So first things first that we need to do is we need to label the sides of our triangle. We have three different sides here. We have opposite, hypotenuse, and adjacent. And we need to make sure that we label correctly, because if we don't, then all of the work that we're doing will be wrong if we can't even label our triangle, okay? So I always like to start off with the hypotenuse. I'm labeling mine in blue, and the hypotenuse is always the side that's opposite your right angle. So here's my right angle. It's always the side that's opposite the right angle. So I know this side here is my hypotenuse side, okay? Because it's the one opposite the right angle. Also, hypotenuse is always the longest side of a right triangle. So that also can help you too, okay? Now what I want to do is I want to figure out where my opposite side is. And I've labeled all my opposite sides here in red. Now, opposite side, the opposite side of your right triangle is the side that is opposite of your angle. Now, it's not the right angle, because we've already used that with hypotenuse, right? Hypotenuse is opposite the right angle. The opposite side is opposite of your reference angle. So to find out my opposite side, what I like to do is I always like to start where my reference angle is, and I draw a line that's going straight across to the opposite side. So that would make my 18 side, this side here, is my opposite side. And the arrow is a really nice way to show that from my reference angle, this is my opposite side. And last but not least is we have our adjacent side. Well, there's only one other side left, and so I can label this guy my adjacent side. And it's the adjacent side because it's the side that's next to or adjacent to my reference angle. Okay, now the hypotenuse will always be adjacent to the reference angle, but we never call this the hypotenuse because it's the hypotenuse. It has a special name. Okay, so that's how we label our sides. Now, looking at our triangle, I see that 18 is my opposite side. I want to find x, which is my adjacent side. So I now need to look at my 3 trig functions and figure out which of those 3 uses opposite and adjacent. And the only one that does is tangent. So now I get to actually set up our formula to use it to solve for our side x. So I know that I'm going to be using tangent of theta. Well, theta is my angle here, and so that is 40 degrees. And it equals my opposite side. Well, my opposite side is 18 over my adjacent side, which is x. And now I have an equation that I can solve for x. So let's go ahead and solve this out. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cross multiply this. So I'm going to go ahead and put this over 1 just to help me see how I'm going to cross multiply. So I'm going to have 18 times 1. Well, that just gives me 18 equals, I'm going to cross multiply, and I'll draw this one in. I'm going to cross multiply that. And so I'll have x times tangent of 40 degrees. Okay, last step is that I want to get x by itself. And right now I'm multiplying by tangent of 40 degrees. So I need to divide both sides here by tangent of 40 degrees. Okay, this is just basic algebra. The geometry's left over. All we have to do now is just solve for x. So now I can cancel those tangents of 40s. That just becomes a 1. So x equals 18 over tangent of 40 degrees. And that's what you can type into your calculator. Be sure, I'm going to remind you guys, if you're using your phone calculator, be sure that your calculator, I'll write it right here, it has to be in degree mode. If it's not in degree mode, you're going to get the wrong answer here. You go ahead and plug that in, 18 divided by tangent of 40 degrees, and you'll get your answer. All right, guys, I hope this was a nice refresher of how we can use trigonometry functions in order to solve for an unknown variable. All right, guys, I'll see you next time.